Guys, Dana White just announced the UFC has a new home with CBS Paramount Plus.
Dana White announced his new UFC broadcast partner. UFC in 2026 will broadcast live on CBS Sports Network and Paramount Plus. The pay-per-view model has also been abolished, as fans in the United States will have access to all UFC events just via subscription, Dana White said. This historic deal with Paramount and CBS is incredible for UFC fans and our athletes. For the first time ever, fans in the US will have access to all UFC content without the pay-per-view model, making it more affordable and accessible to view the greatest fights on a massive platform. This deal puts UFC amongst the biggest sports in the world. The exposure provided by the Paramount and CBS network under this new structure is a huge win for our athletes and anyone who watches and loves the sport.
And the biggest news, no more pay-per-views. We get the fights for free as long as you have the app, Paramount Plus, and probably some huge fights on CBS. This is a big deal. We've been hearing that, the UFC might go with a bunch of different networks, kind of do what the NBA and NFL are doing, being on all these different networks. But this is an exclusive deal with CBS and Paramount Plus, and I feel like it's a great idea. First of all, no more pay-per-views. That is huge for any fight fan. And of course, boxing started it off. Turki Al Sheikh started off by saying, boxing is gonna go towards a route with no more pay-per-views with Netflix and Amazon Prime and all of these other, different streaming services. Now, I already have Paramount Plus, so hopefully, we don't see. This is all coming in 2026, by the way. The UFC will finish out the year with ESPN. But hopefully we don't see Paramount Plus all of a sudden jack up the price as soon as, the UFC rolls around. But right now, it's like $5 for Paramount Plus. So get in while you can. Again, Dana White announces the UFC will exclusively be on CBS Paramount Plus. Listen, I think the UFC signed with ESPN back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, and I thought it was a big mistake from the beginning. I didn't like the whole ESPN one, honestly. I thought there was some obviously great years for the UFC with ESPN. I just did not like the fact that, the UFC kind of was fighting for a lot of different spots with ESPN. Of course, ESPN has a huge deal with the NBA. If you're an NBA fan like myself, you know that. And they have a deal with the NFL. They have a deal with baseball. They have a deal with, basically every sport under the sun. So you can't get, too much airtime on ESPN. And a lot of times people were pissed off because the UFC would be kind of like, downgraded to ESPN2 and all of these other things, all of the shows that are, catered for UFC fans, all these types of things were kind of like shoved aside. But I feel like with CBS Paramount Plus, CBS has a lot of, sports under their belt also, but not as much as ESPN, honestly. So I think it'll be a better deal. I think, you might go back to the, if people remember the Fox days, you had Fox Sports, carrying the UFC. And I thought the UFC had, a bigger spotlight on them when they were on Fox. Now, of course, the trajectory of the UFC increased. It's a much bigger, promotion, obviously, because they've grown so much over the last 6 years. However, I feel like the spotlight on them was much bigger when they were Fox than ESPN. But, like I said, I really like this deal. The UFC's new home, CBS, Paramount Plus, no more pay-per-views. Let me know what you guys think. Comment, like, subscribe, share. I appreciate it. Peace.